I'm going to do a full breakdown of the production of my song Drift and talk about how I recorded it and ultimately how I mixed it. All right, so let's dive right into the drums. So I want to show you the first kind of demo drums I started with. So kind of a cool hip hop sort of vibe to them. But I really liked the beat and wanted a similar sound. So I hired a drummer named Steve Stout, who's a great musician, and he recorded these drums for me. Love how they turned out. Just feels a lot more organic and human. And so let's dive in. I don't know exactly all the mics he used, but I can just show you the sounds and how it all fit together. So for the kick sound, we have kick drum in, and then a kick drum out, which is your low end. And so together they form kind of the full picture there. And a little bit of a noise gate on those. And then the kick over mic is like a batter side kick drum mic. And it gives you just a really cool character to the attack. Really solid feeling attack to that. So I brought out some mid-range on that and blended that with the other mics. They sound like this. So that gave me everything I need. I played around with adding kick samples, but didn't need it. It sounded great. And then on the bus, where all of those are, I added some compression and distortion. So this is a common thing you'll see on kick, snare, toms, a lot of it. All compress to kind of glue the sounds together, and then distort to kind of smooth them out and add a sense of thickness. And it also kind of trims the transients and controls, gives us some headroom back. And the compression's making it feel more punchy. So it's kind of that push and pull where I don't want to kill the transient, but I do want to make the sound consistent and have a consistent attack sound to it. So this helps achieve that without. And after that, I did some multi-band saturation, just adding tape saturation to the top bands of mid-range and high-end frequencies. So this is another trick I do on a lot of stuff where I don't want to distort the low end too much and that kind of falls apart and sounds bad. But I do want to bring out more of that presence and kind of smooth out the clicky transients of the drums. Did some more EQ and some dynamic expansion of the mid-range. So that gives you more of that knocky sound. And then I tightened up the sustain with a transient designer just to keep it all really punchy. And we have the snare. So the snare top sounded great. Just a little EQ shaping, tucking in a resonance, boosting the fundamental into mid-range, taking out the harsh stuff. Noise gate. A little more EQ to add high end. He leaned into the mic pre's pretty heavy, so there's some natural distortion on there that's really cool. And then snare bottom. So this is a common move I'll do where I duck out the harsh kind of high mids and then bring out some like high end air with a shelf and then compress it. So you get that nice crispy kind of wire sound of the snare together. And they go to a bus where I compress them together. Glues the sounds together a little bit. A little more EQ shaping, getting rid of that nasty 5K. And then distortion. This is again that compression, distortion sandwich that I'll do. A little more EQ, shaping, and a clipper. So this is just doing the very loudest peaks, not much. And then I have a sample supporting underneath. Just adding a little bit of a different flavor to it. And it's not going to the bus, it's kind of living parallel to it. And some hi-hat. There's kind of this annoying resonant frequency I wanted to get rid of. And then bring out a lot of high end. Because it was a very dark sound. Also did some compression to kind of tuck in some of the louder hi-hat hits, and transient shaping to tighten up the sound. So it's a pretty big difference without. And that just helps kind of bring that hi-hat in focus. Rack tom. Good old thud. And then floor tom. And for both of these, they have the same thing going on, just using the SSL to add a lot of top end, scoop out a lot of mid-range, boost some lows, and do some compression. My noise gate on those. So this helps cut a lot of cymbal bleed too. Distortion, more distortion, and bus together. And this is actually an important thing. So a lot of times toms, especially the floor tom, can get really flabby in the low end. So I like to shelf it down quite a bit and then have some upward expansion. So you get that low end back, but only right when it hits. So it just keeps it tight so you don't have this like really long low end hum after the floor tom hits. And then a clipper. There's some really wild transients on the floor tom especially, so this helps rein that in. And a little bit of reverb. Then we have mono and stereo overheads. The mono is kind of more of the vibey sound. A little more saturated. And then stereo gives you that wide image. So I did narrow the image a little bit, brought it to like 68%, did some EQ and compression. More EQ, tape. This plugin made a big difference, so listen without it. It just opens up the sound, makes it sound really hi-fi. And then Soothe to catch some, mainly for the chorus, honestly, it's the cymbals. That nasty metallic ring is getting soaked up by that. For the mono overhead, I did some channel strip EQ with the Neve, some more EQ, taking out a lot of mid-range because it was a darker sound. I think this was recorded with a ribbon. Some compression, and then a bunch of tape saturation with the J37. And those are bussed together. Do a little bit of mid-range cleanup and reduce some sustain to kind of tighten up the sound. This helps it sound like it was recorded in a smaller room. We have some rooms as well. Just rolling off top and bottom to tuck in the edges so it doesn't kind of stick out too much in the mix. Compression, distortion, and a pretty low blend on that. And so all of these are going to a dry bus with some tape and EQ, and this is the majority of the sound, but blended in a little bit, there's some distortion. With pretty much all the drums, and then compression with a hardware 1176 clone. And that is blended in, so all together it sounds like this. And on the main bus, I have a little EQ, some more high-end excitement, soothe, taming a little bit more of the harsh bits up there. Oh, I have this cool retro effect in the second verse. So that automates on. And then throughout the song, you'll hear I have this delay going. It's an eighth, dotted eighth note delay. It kind of adds this cool bounciness to the groove. And then a clipper. So this is just taming some of the loudest snare and kick hits. So that is the drums. In addition, we have some percussion going on. We got some tambourine. So this is recorded really simply, just, you know, a Shure Unidyne 545. It's just like an SM57. Just did a high pass. Some reverb, some tape, some hits that have some spring reverb on them. We have some shaker recorded with a condenser. And then a Lindrum programmed Kabasa doing some cool like offbeat stuff. So with the drums. Just kind of adding to the groove of everything. And then in the choruses, I have this kind of dreamy ride cymbal. This is the Roland CR78 kind of drum machine sample. And it really blends in with the ride cymbal. So you don't notice it until the second chorus, it kind of becomes more prominent. And last but not least, we have some cymbal swells going into the chorus. And Juno noise swell. So, you know, classic trick to help that transition along. And moving right along, we have our bass. So I recorded this DI, just a little compression on the way in. Here's the raw DI sound. With some flat wound strings on that, so kind of has a nice thumpy sound to it. And I use this just for the low end and compress it a bunch to kind of give a lot of weight to just that low end part. So just consistently throughout all the notes, it stays, you know, feeling solid. And then the amp sound. So that's the Ampeg B15. High passed it, added some distortion, some chorus. This is what's cool about splitting the bass into high and low, is you can add stereo effects to the top end and you don't have to worry about phase messiness in the low end. And then some more EQ shaping and 660 Fairchild on compression. This adds some really cool color to bass. Recommended a lot. More mid-range with CQ, some more distortion with radiator, and then a little bit of the sidechain compression going on with the kick drum. Just helps it kind of lock in together. And then all those, the percussion, the drums, and the bass are going to a bus and being compressed with a hardware stereo compressor, the decomp from Audioscape. So that's just locking in the rhythm section and making it feel really tight. I also have some ambience with some stereo slapback, just really low in the mix. And yeah, that's it for bass. So we have guitars. There's rhythm guitars. And doing very little to these. I record them on the way in with the Dream 65 amp sim pedal. I use the small clone chorus pedal, and I use my Fender Strat on that. And then I add a little bit of reverb. Some Valhalla Vintage Verb is my favorite for like a hall reverb. And then I just use Chroma Verb for like a room reverb on that. So without any of that, And that's the same, a similar chain as what I use on the other guitars too. We have some overdriven guitars that come in the chorus. I added a little bit of extra modulation to those, and then some acoustic guitars to add some more texture. And then the main lead guitar. So this sound is kind of what I started with when I was building the demo. And it's Dream 65 going into a stereo chorus pedal, the TC Electronics SCF stereo chorus pedal. We have a similar tone in the chorus, but I filtered it so it wasn't taking up much space. And then a lead guitar. So this just is a lot wetter. It has spring reverb and has delay and has even more hall reverb on it. So it's just really shoegazy and kind of dreamy. And then we have some synthesizers. We have Juno 106 style sounds here. So there's a main kind of arpeggiator. And then in the chorus, I bring in some like string sounds, doubling that. And it's descending rather than ascending arpeggios, just to kind of change the feel of it. Those are also going to some Valhalla vintage verb. And yeah, not much going on in those. Took out some more low end on the strings. And then last but not least is vocals. So vocals, my arrangement on this, I have kind of the main vocal sound is doubled, equal volume, panned out a little bit. So verse. I drive into the familiar dark. And I have some eighth note delay on that. I have some hall reverb, some spring reverb, a little bit of chorus, and then yeah, some different layers of compression and whatnot. But it's a pretty simple kind of clean sound. And then the chorus vocals have a more significant quarter note delay on them. Watch it drift away into yesterday. So it just kind of swirls around you. And on both of these, I also have them sending to a parallel bus with compression and an overdriven mic preamp. And it adds just a really cool, like crunchy texture. Into yesterday. Just all buttons in, just obliterating it and mixing it in pretty subtly. Spring reverb as well that I used in the verses. I love just how ghostly that sounds underneath the vocals, kind of mono like that. We have some harmonies, so the main chorus harmonies. Watch you drift away. With the same effects. And then in the verses, I did some kind of falsetto upper octave layers. So that just really hides behind the main vocal and kind of creates this ghostly shimmer effect. Another summer that fades away. And then in the second half of that verse, kind of changes to this lo-fi feel. Too slow, too fast. What's golden won't last. So the RC20 is doing some kind of wobbly chorus effect and distortion and just rolling off highs and lows to give it that retro feel. And then yeah, it comes back in the main part with the hi-fi harmonies. And on the main vocal bus, I like to use stabilizer to kind of tuck in mid-range that's kind of building up between all the layers. So this is really helpful to kind of balance things. You don't want
go. You don't wanna stay.
Added a bit more mid-range and cut some like harsher frequencies. So I also use the main bus to kind of do a little more tailoring when I get further along in the mix.
Watch it drift away.
And then on the second layer of vocal bus, I have some compression, doing about a dB.
In the day to day.
So just gluing everything together and adding some character, a little bit more presence with the Pultec, and that all goes to the mix bus. So I kind of break it down into rhythm bus, instrument bus, vocal bus, and then those all go to the mix bus, where I have smiley face EQ with Pultec, parametric EQ to do some more kind of like fine tuning, hardware compressor, and a pair of preamps to add some transformer saturation and glue to the mix, some tape, the Oxford inflator to add more loudness, and then a limiter. So that's kind of the full chain that you hear. And that basically, I do a little fine tuning and mastering, but that's essentially the sound of the master. All right, so that is the mix. Hopefully you guys learned something. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, just let me know down in the comments. Happy to answer them.